Can a king stop the sea or a president hold a country together with words alone? Sounds impossible, right? But these strange questions take us straight into the world of leadership. Real leadership that goes beyond power, rules, and orders. Today we're going into the lives of two leaders who couldn't be more different. King Canute and Abraham Lincoln. One ruled with a crown, the other with a stovepipe hat. Yet both of them showed us what true leadership looks like when things get tough. Their actions didn't just change their times. They still echo in our world today. Stay with us, and if you're enjoying what you're hearing already, hit subscribe and turn on the bell right here on the Edutaining History channel. The world of King Canute, a Viking who wanted peace more than war. Sounds strange, but that's exactly who King Canute was. Before he ever faced the tide on that legendary beach, he was already showing people what kind of ruler he intended to be. The 11th century was no gentle time. It was all blades, battles, and kingdoms fighting for every inch of land. But Canute, he did things differently. When he became King of England, he didn't plunder it. He ruled it like it was his home, not just his prize. This was a man who didn't come in swinging swords. He came in with a sharp mind. He saw a vision, and instead of exploiting it, he patched it up. People expected blood. Canute brought unity. He balanced ruling three major kingdoms, England, Denmark, and Norway. That's not just impressive, that's unheard of at the time. And how did he do it? By learning, listening, and leading without needing to yell the loudest. Now let's talk about that throne in the ocean moment. Canute told his servants to carry him to the edge of the sea. He sat there and told the waves to stop. They didn't, obviously, but the message was clear. Canute wasn't showing off. He was making a point. Even a king can't command the forces of nature. That's real power, knowing what you can't control and still having the strength to say it out loud. He didn't want to be treated like a god. He wanted to be seen as a man doing a hard job. He wasn't flexing. He was reminding people to stay grounded. Imagine that kind of humility today. A ruler telling people, hey, I'm not above the universe. I'm going to serve. That's not just leadership. That's wisdom. Canute's leadership style. What kind of ruler walks into a new kingdom and chooses not to erase the culture he finds there? A smart one. A bold one. That was Canute. He looked at England and saw a place with customs, traditions, and a faith deeply tied to the people. So he didn't try to wipe it clean. He worked with it, respected it, grew into it. He paid respect to the church, built relationships with bishops, and used those bonds to strengthen the kingdom. He understood that religion wasn't just about belief, it was about connection. If you wanted peace, you had to work with the voices that people trusted. Canute wasn't just ruling from a throne. He was on the ground, building ties that mattered. His ability to adapt was one of his strongest traits. Being king of three different regions meant three different ways of life. But instead of forcing one style on everyone, he adapted. That's not weak leadership. That's brilliant flexibility. Canute didn't pretend to have all the answers. He listened to the people who knew the land better than he did. And he surrounded himself with people who weren't afraid to speak up. Now meet Abraham Lincoln. What happens when a man with no royal blood, no wealth, and no army has to lead a country through its deadliest war? You get Abraham Lincoln. He didn't wear armor. He wore a suit and a serious face. But behind that face was a heart that beat for unity, for justice, and for every person who called themselves American. Lincoln walked into the White House not with thunder, but with questions. How do you hold a nation together when half of it wants to leave? How do you lead people who hate each other? These weren't easy problems, but Lincoln didn't run from them. He faced them slow and steady. He didn't shout. He didn't rage. He told stories. He made jokes. He cried in private. He visited soldiers, walked among the wounded, and wrote letters late into the night. He showed a side of leadership that didn't need grand speeches all the time. Sometimes all it needed was someone who truly cared. Lincoln's human touch. It's easy to say you care, but Lincoln lived it. He walked into army camps not to give commands, but to listen. He asked about their lives. He laughed with them. That wasn't some PR move. That was real. Soldiers knew Lincoln had their backs, not just because he was the president, but because he showed up. He faced endless criticism. People called him weak, slow, even foolish, but he didn't clap back. He stayed the course. He brought people into his circle who didn't even like him. His own cabinet was filled with rivals. That sounds like a nightmare, right? But for Lincoln, it was strength. Disagreement didn't scare him. It sharpened him. This man knew that if you want to do what's right, you need every voice in the room, even the ones that push back. That's courage. That's not just politics. That's leadership without ego. And in the toughest times, that's exactly what held the nation together. Facing the impossible, imagine knowing your decision could tear the country apart, but still knowing you have to make it. That was Lincoln with slavery. He hated it. But ending it wasn't as simple as giving a speech. If he moved too fast, the Union could collapse. Too slow, and justice would be delayed again. So he waited, but not out of fear, out of strategy. And when the moment came, he acted. The Emancipation Proclamation wasn't just ink on paper. It was a bold move that reshaped America. Lincoln knew the cost. He knew it would stir anger, even among his allies. But he didn't back down. He believed that freedom wasn't something to be bartered with. It had to be demanded, even when the price was high. His leadership wasn't just about winning a war. It was about redefining what the country stood for. That's not something you do by chance. That takes guts. That takes vision. And Lincoln had both. Comparing two giants, a Viking king and an American president. On the surface, they're nothing alike. But look closer and you'll see something powerful. Canute and Lincoln both understood that leading isn't about looking strong. It's about being strong. Not loud, not flashy, but real. They knew power had limits. Canute showed it by letting the sea speak. Lincoln showed it by letting his enemies talk. Neither of them chased applause. They chased progress. That's rare. That's the kind of leadership people never forget. When others reached for control, they reached for clarity. When others looked for followers, they looked for answers. That's why their stories still matter. That's why we talk about them centuries later. They led not with fear, but with purpose. And that's the legacy they left behind. What we can learn today. Look around today, and it's easy to feel like leadership has lost its meaning. Too much noise, too much drama. But when you study Canute and Lincoln, you realize it doesn't have to be that way. Leadership can still be steady, it can still be kind, it can still mean something. We don't need perfect leaders, we need honest ones. Leaders who know their limits, who ask hard questions. You don't have to wear a crown or win an election to be a leader. You just have to care enough to lead with heart. Why this matters? History isn't just stories from the past. It's the guidebook we forget to read. And when you look at leaders like Canute and Lincoln, that guidebook comes alive. They didn't have perfect answers, but they asked the right questions. They didn't always win, but they always stood up for something bigger than themselves. We live in a fast world, but real leadership takes time. It takes patience, honesty, and vision. Canute and Lincoln remind us that even when things seem too broken to fix, someone has to step up. Someone has to believe it's worth trying. That someone can be any one of us. Because leadership isn't about position. It's about action. And when you act with wisdom, empathy, and courage, you're walking the same path those giants once walked. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this journey through the lives of King Canute and Abraham Lincoln, hit that like button, leave a comment, and subscribe to the Edutaining History channel. We got more stories, more lessons, and more history waiting for you. See you in the next one, and as always, stay curious.